down there, I guess. Are you looking for a mic runner?
Yeah, Doug said he would, unless someone else wanted to. Would anyone really like to run around with a mic?
Oh, there comes
Thank
Doug
you, Phil.
also.
The exercise.
Okay. So we have the opportunity for questions and discussion, and we use the mic especially so that people who are streaming can hear. It helps in the room also, but without that, the streamers would not get anything. And I want to say one thing that came up on the break. Someone had the question, is it possible to lie down for meditation? And that is definitely a yes. Even the Buddha taught that there are 4 positions for meditation, official positions, which are sitting, standing, walking, and lying down. So, and the nice thing lying down, you can have a straight spine, you can relax, and it's quite fine. So, you might not see that, but what I think is true is that people who want to lie down will often go to the balcony because there is carpeting up there, so it's more conducive. So I suggest that for anyone who, when you might need that.
Do you just want to mention the feet position?
Well, I don't know. There is the Tibetans would have the tradition of not pointing your feet towards any, like towards the shrine, basically. But I don't know. It's not such a hard and fast rule. I think it's more it relates to a lot of things. Like you might not want to put them in somebody's face. You might, there's a lot of. So just even what works. So. I think don't feel constrained. Cynthia.
Sometimes with practice, it feels kind of like water dripping on a stone, that you only get somewhere because you keep at it for a really long period of time. And then sometimes there are things that seem to kind of open up your understanding in a bigger way. And I'm just curious because you've been sitting there as a teacher for many years, but not talking so much. So I feel like I know very little about your experiences. And if it wouldn't put you too much on the spot, I'd love to hear you tell if you have experiences, either mundane, wandering around the house and something occurs to you, or in a more technically spiritual context, maybe on retreat or something, when you had the feeling not just of, well, my practice is drip, 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 but something opening up.
Well, I don't know that my experience is all that relevant in particularly compared to anyone else's. So if anybody else has something to say about that too, it would be fine. I definitely have the, I have the experience of both of those things. That what you say is true, the drip drip and the whoa, that's cool. I didn't like how long it seemed like I had to wait for some of the experiences that I thought were most interesting. I also don't like that I've had, some other things seem to be, you do some kind of exercise and you do it over and over, and it seems like you kind of go like this. I mean, you have little setbacks, but I don't know. I feel like with meditation, there's too much. They're like sometimes it goes down, and where I want it to be at least a steady up with that drip drip thing. But on the other hand, they say that looking, I think it was the Dalai Lama or something, like, don't look too finely, like don't look like yesterday, like today should be better than yesterday, and it's not. But this year, how's it going this year? And does that seem like there's something detectable compared to last year, or that kind of time frame? It's good, I think, to kind of take stock. But yeah, I think all those things happen. Sometimes, reading something at the right moment. And often that happens with me. So doing personal retreat, or any retreat, actually doing any retreat, has been very helpful for my practice. Although, again, it's very easy to have the expectation it's going to be like that, and then to say, this one's not that way. This one's, I'm not getting anywhere with this one. But, so that's, we're taught to really try to minimize having these expectations about what our practice is going to be, either in a session or on a retreat. But definitely, some of the books that have made the most impact on me, especially in a really a practice way, are, I'll look at different books on a retreat, and there will be one that I maybe get into, and then it just seems like it's telling me exactly what I need to know at that moment, and it really, really helps. And so sometimes I've had some openings through books, and then, as you say, it could be just a daily experience or a practice in a daily practice or a retreat. And then there's a lot of time that I feel like I'm not really doing it. It's like I'm sitting here, but I'm not really doing it. And why is that? So all those things. Yeah. But again, I don't think my experience is that necessarily any more relevant than anyone else's. If anybody wants to speak to that, that'd be fine.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a great question, and for me, it almost comes in a non-meditative sense. So I tend to be a little bit of a worrier, and so when you're in that real comfort zone, at least I am, that's the dripping, and then when I get into that zone where I'm sorting through something that's challenging and I'm a little bit in that agitated state, and when I finally kind of sort that out, make a decision, and then I sit, that's when the drip turns into a pour. So for me, it comes most often not just in and of itself, but more associated with kind of a breakthrough about something I'm working on. And putting those two together is where it happens more often for me.
Thank you.
For me, it doesn't always happen on the cushion at all. One of the most important and powerful realizations I had was in the middle of a very heated argument. I looked at the person I was arguing with, and I saw suffering, and I knew that I was contributing to it, and I just stopped talking. I couldn't. So I think that it's just happens when it happens in interaction in your daily life, when your mind is alert to it, some quite startling thing can happen. And then when you're trying so hard, sitting in meditation, to have something happen, it's just drip, 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 drip.
I would say for me that illuminations are illusory. I need them, I want them, I look for them, I feel them, and then they're gone a week later. But they somehow help me stay on the path, so I'm grateful for those illusions.
They do. There's a distinction that's made in different words that are used for meditative experiences and then realization. And what they say is that experiences are definitely transitory, come and go. And like you say, they can be inspiring, so I value them for that. They can also be something that we put out there. I want to have that again. And we point ourselves we're not even implementing the practice again, because what we're doing is trying to do something that isn't actually even following the instructions for meditation. We're just pining after something, trying to make something happen again, which is not very effective. But still, they can be inspirational. And then realization is said to be something that generally happens more gradually, and that it doesn't sort of go away in the same way as experiences.
So I found it with a book and then the daily life because of reading. I think I was reading Tsoknyi Rinpoche's, and he was pointing to recognizing our habits. And then I was on a day of extra stress and after a long period of extra stress. And then there was stress added to it on deadline. And Bruce stepped into our kitchen, which was big enough for one. And it was like, boom, flashpoint. And then I just burst out laughing because it was like, oh man, you're running your patterns, I'm running mine. And it was just like clear. But that was so the reading and the daily and the cushion is all what Kempele talks about with familiarization. Like, isn't the word meditation like one of the definitions? Familiarizing or remembering. And so it's like, oh yeah, so on my cushion or here or reading helps me recognize what's right in front of my face. Yeah. And so that familiarizing is what helps my drips or the flood. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, the word gom in Tibetan is often translated as familiarization. Mm-hmm.
Well, this is a different topic. Well, same topic, different angle. So I've been noticing for a long time that as I'm meditating, especially if I'm quite still, I'll have some physical sensation, an itch or something, which can become quite aversive. And I'll sort of think to myself, well, samsara begins with attachment and aversion. And so this is a great opportunity to not prefer one thing or another and trying to sit with that aversive physical sensation. And then sometimes I'll have a discussion with myself, well, you know, it's very easy to get rid of that one, and so is it really worth that, and all that kind of stuff. And I guess the question is just if you have some wisdom about how valuable those opportunities might actually be for not sort of just habitually acting on aversion, attachment, and how much it might be just kind of silly to struggle with something when it's really, really difficult for you. I mean, one of the things that I've thought about that is that it must have to do to some extent with your level of meditative skill or your spiritual level, because sometimes it's easy, like for me, sometimes it's easier than others like to just put up with pain rather than try and readjust and get rid of it. So this is a bit rambling, I apologize, but I would appreciate any comments you might have about that situation.
I don't consider it rambling at all. It's exactly what what we deal with, isn't it? Seems very clear. And I go through the same debates myself. I think it's kind of a trial and error. What I feel is those do present little opportunities, but I think it's not necessary to take every one of those opportunities. I mean, and like you say, at different times you might feel more kind of like pleased by the challenge, maybe, or like it really is a moment to work with that. And other times maybe you don't want to. And there's, so let's say you have if you would just move your foot, you would get rid of a major pain. Doing that and then continuing your meditation is not necessarily any harm done to the rest of your session. It's, and yet, maybe there was some opportunity there. So I feel like it's okay to take some of those opportunities and not take some. But what I think is valuable in any case is that you notice and you have a pause before you either do something or don't do something. So what we really want to get away from, I think, is the itch, scratch, just react without any space, because that's where we operate a lot of the time. And so if we have the space to recognize, could let that one go, or I choose not to. I'm going to scratch it. I'm going to move my foot, whatever it is. I think it's that initial recognition is very, very important and helpful to have at all times, and less important than what we actually do. I'm just remembering drawing a line out at the SCOL in the early days. We had no buildings except the little farmhouse that's there. And so we did a few retreats where we just put up a big tent. And being so hot, we just had the tent like one side kind of behind Michael and the shrine, and then the rest was open air, and it was just the ceiling. And it would be like in the morning, people would like wear sleeping bags because it was so cold. Other times we'd be there and it was hot, and it would just be, anyway, just really hot in the midday, and you're just there. But now there were times when there were flies. Okay, so fly, crawling on the hand. Yeah, I guess I can do that one. Crawling on the face. Okay. My lips, no. And the real line was up the nose, no way. Someday, maybe, I'll do that, but didn't do it that day. No. So.
Thank you.
So I think my question's similar, and you may have already answered it with the fly thing. So I've got this cat who loves to sit on my lap when I meditate. And that wouldn't be so much of a problem if she didn't also like to put her paws on my shoulder and like butt my head and, do all the things that cats do. And then she also will get up on our air conditioning unit and like hang from the window screen of the window that I'm meditating in because she wants in. And do I get up? And if I close the door, that's even worse because then she like hangs on the doorknob.
Wow.
She's very persistent. So again, along the lines of the flies, like dealing with distractions in meditation, like how far is too far, and particularly when that one distraction is very persistent and does not want to be shut out.
Yeah, well, you got to look at the effects. You have to look at the effects on your practice and notice what that does. For me, I think, and I have had times with cats, other animals, mainly cats, where that I couldn't. I was distracted unduly. It was not helpful. Certain amount. Okay, there's continuity here, and then it's like answering the phone or something. No, that doesn't really. I couldn't. I always say there's somebody who could practice with all that, like with continuity of attention, but you have to look and see if that's you or not. And if not, then you might want to try to minimize though it sounds like keeping the cat out of the room doesn't solve the thing.
If humans could figure out how to keep cats out of the bed or out of the room, we would have done it thousands of years ago. But I think it's hard because she's also the cat who gets up on my shrine and drinks from the offering bowls and rubs on my Buddha statues and knocks them over, and like
It's just a part of everything.
I don't want to go so far as to say that she has interest in it, but she's the only one of my 4 cats who does this.
Oh.
So there's a part of me that also feels like I don't want to deny her the experience if she can sit still. But the sitting still part is sometimes that we have to negotiate that. So, but I'll have to think about the continuity of attention and such, because it's a fine line with her between ignoring and, do I just get up and let her in because otherwise she'll be meowing and hanging from the screen the entire time. So.
Yeah, and see how it's different for your meditation to either get up and let her in or hear the noise of the screen and
We'll to see. So, thank you.
Yeah, we don't need to have total peace and quiet for our practice, but there are reasons that we sit still. There's reasons that we try to have a place that doesn't have a whole lot going on. Otherwise, pretty challenging. Yeah.
I have an observation and a suggestion. So to me, it seems obvious that this being is gonna maybe come back in a different light, different form, like a human, so they can practice the next go round. But then the other thing is, if you have the opportunity, maybe when the cat is on your lap, to do the mama cat thing and just grab it by the scruff and sit with it like that, because it might calm it down.
I have a similar cat. And I started watching to see when he went to sleep. So when he goes to sleep, I sit down to meditate. It works. It's not always when I want to sit down to meditate, but at least I can sit without interruption. Oh, no.
Sounds to me like you enjoy it.
That's true. You got more coming than the cat. Someone was asking on the break, and I forgot to mention, we do have a basket now for people who would like to write a question rather than speak in front of the group. So that's in the back of the room for future reference. But someone did ask about what seemed like a possible contradiction between aren't we supposed to not be judgmental about the thoughts and things that come to our minds versus my talk about kind of weeding out the negative and cultivating the positive. And so I wanted to make sure that it's clear that there really are two kinds of practice that we do. And so an easy way to talk about them is to label one that it's kind of a relative practice according to relative bodhicitta, which is basically working within the system of that we find ourselves in, of where there really is positive and negative. So positive being something that leads to benefit for ourselves or others, and negative being something that leads to harm to self or others. There's a difference between that kind of relative situation where we really are trying to make changes in our body, speech, and mind that are lead to more positive actions of body, speech, and mind, and fewer actions of negative actions of body, speech, and mind. And then there's our practice that helps us go towards an ultimate understanding and experience. It's not an intellectual understanding, but an experience of the actual underlying nature of things, of the world, of ourselves, of phenomena. And that calls for a different kind of technique where really there is no need to judge the positive and negative, that we see everything coming from this nature and a commonality of all experience that is coming out of this underlying nature. So it's good to know which thing we're doing at any given time. So an example would be We don't want to be thinking, well, good, bad, you know, sugar, fat, carbohydrates, what's the difference? No, we want to eat foods. Well, anyway, illusory body, why should I eat any food? So, okay, you do need to eat food, and it's good to be discerning about which kind of food you eat and which kind of food you don't eat. There are consequences. Your future is determined by all these things that you put in your body, that you put in your mind. All of that, we should be careful with all of that, and it is a world of more positive and more negative results happening. So, but what I was hoping to convey in this morning was that our practice of calm abiding really sets us up for both of these kinds of practice. So by having more awareness and more ability to pay attention and more ability to see what's happening at any given moment in our minds, we can, it sets us up for being able to make the changes in our relative behavior of body, speech, and mind, and being able to see, oh, my pattern's running, my husband's pattern's running, whatever, and make a choice to, let me just ditch that this time. As opposed to, we also are not opposed to, but in addition, our calm abiding sets up our practice. During our calm abiding, we do a lot of, in that case, we are letting go, we're letting be. So in that case, a thought, if it's positive or negative, we're not trying to change what it is. We're not trying to add thoughts or subtract them. We're just allowing them to come and go. But we also have, we do have practices which we tend to call them contemplations rather than meditation. But our contemplative practices might be things like where we are trying to cultivate thoughts, or we hope that through the thoughts it leads to kind of a change in us, an experiential change, where, say, we're cultivating loving kindness or compassion. So we intentionally then put thoughts in our mind. We remind ourselves of how kind our parents were to us, all the things they did for us. We intentionally think about those things, or how kind anyone else was to us, and how that induces in us some kind of sense of wish to also show that kind of kindness to others, et cetera, et cetera. So that becomes a use of our actually trying to use what's in our mind and affect what's in our mind. And then that leads to helping us with the actions that come out of that kind of thinking, and that kind of experience will be different than if we had not tried that kind of intentional cultivation. So that kind of practice is, you can say that's also in the relative sphere. But both of these kinds of practice are important.
I would like to say how grateful I am for your teaching today, Dora. Thank you so much for stepping up to take a little burden off Sopa. It's very precious for us.
Well, Sopa has been doing a lot. A lot's been on her shoulders, so it was hard to say no.
Thank you, Phil. I just thought I'll say something, and thank you, Dora. Yeah, I think it's really wonderful you're stepping up. But I was thinking of the cat. And I've had cats, and now I have a dog. The dog poses different things. But what really came to my mind was the Verm Room in our neighborhood. You know, the guys living across the street with their scooters. And it started last year, and they don't have mufflers, you know. And so all summer long, these vroom, you know, there were more than one, my husband told me. And finally, I wrote a poem, and I took it to them. And that was kind of fun. But the thing is, it hasn't stopped altogether. And I think it has subsided a little bit, but it's an interesting thing in the neighborhood. And I feel like now it is kind of it's my invitation to, oh, Deborah, can you turn your mind somewhere else, you know? So it's not really a question so much as I just wanted to offer that in the conversation, because it really, I was fortunate to go on a short retreat not long ago, and when I came home, I felt like I had a new way of thinking about the vroom, and so I think your cat's preparing you. And the vroom is preparing me for summer again, when the windows will be open. But maybe Dora has something else she can offer on this, because those sounds of the city.
There will always be. There will always be sounds and other disturbances. It's just a matter of level. And then it's interesting, when things are quite quiet, there's a lot of disturbance right here. So inner, outer, we can try to, it's good to try to work with all of it.
As a practitioner who has a non-dharmic partner, I find myself a little jealous of people like you who have a partner to practice with. And then I think, well, you know, it's not all bad to have the independence of going down in the morning while she's sleeping late and meditating. But I sometimes I wonder what I'm missing in that way, you know, because I just don't know. Do you think it's important to have kind of a Dharma buddy, if not a spouse, that you can kind of, you know, practice and share things and try things out and kind of kick each other in the butt and, you know, helpful stuff like that? Is that an important part of practice or not, or can it just be a solitary thing? I mean, I know we have the Sangha, we have KCC, we have classes and stuff, but the day-to-day is, I mean, the core of my practice anyway.
Yeah, good avenue of thought. Yep, I feel like I've been fortunate. Very fortunate to have a Dharma partner. It's not all totally positive, because a person could, you know, there's been times when, it's some one time, I don't know, maybe this was good. I'm not sure what good or bad. But anyway, you can have that, like, well, I want to go, I think I want to do the 3-year retreat. It was some previous, this long time ago one. And then the other one saying, no, I don't want to do that. Okay. Then, you know, maybe then the other time somebody else gets the urge. No. So you could also discourage each other from doing something. On the other hand, was very good when we hit upon the wish to do a 1-year retreat, and we both agreed, and it was very helpful. I mean, I don't think I would have done it by myself, for instance. But I would say that a very nice thing is having someone to talk with about the practice. And that's what probably Bill and I do more than, we have our different places we practice in the house, and and so that's still a solitary thing, but having someone to talk about the Dharma and reflect on things you read or things you're experiencing, that can be quite fruitful. So, and we do that here and in the different study groups and things, but for more of that, having a Dharma buddy that you have coffee with or something and chat about those things could be nice. I don't know, what do other people think? In 2 minutes. Marcy's got.
I don't have a lot to say, but I have noticed that I think it makes a huge difference having someone in your daily life that shares the Dharma. For me, I felt more inspired to practice more consistently, and I don't know, very, very kind of nourishing, I feel like.
The best possible situation is to work in a place where everybody's practicing. It's been the best benefit of this job.
And we're sure glad you think so, Linda. And may we all practice better and make your job more enjoyable. All right, thanks everyone for your questions and contributions and attention. And let's remember again where we started, the wish for bodhicitta, the aspiration for ourselves and all beings in the whole world and the whole universe to be led to full awakening, full enlightenment.
By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
You all.